About a month ago now, the EA exclusivity license ended with Disney and Lucasfilm, meaning that EA is no longer the only company that is able to make Star Wars games. We've just recently had the Star Wars Outlaws reveal, pretty much around the same time as well, and Star Wars Hunters is meant to be releasing it later this year as well. So we are kind of entering into a brand new era of Star Wars, and today I wanted to go through all of the info that we have on every single upcoming Star Wars game, everything from who it's being made by, what type of game it is, and when the expected, or even in some cases announced release date is. And so without wasting any more time, let's jump right into it. Now the first game worth mentioning is something that you guys may have seen me cover here on the channel, and that is Star Wars Hunters. Now this game is meant to be releasing this year. For those who haven't played the game, it is a 4v4 multiplayer arena shooter. It's kind of similar to a game like Overwatch, for example, a very hero-based shooter that is very team oriented. And like I said, it will be releasing it later this year on both mobile and Nintendo Switch devices that we know of so far. I've got a video that's just gone up talking about potentially the game launching on consoles, but that is just speculation as of right now. Now, the game was actually meant to be releasing in 2021, and then it did get delayed actually multiple times. It initially got delayed until 2022, and then it was delayed once again. So, like I said, it's meant to be launching this year. Whether it actually happens, I'm not too sure, because we still really have not heard that much about the game. It is currently in its soft launch though, and it has been since, I think, November of 2021. So it's actually been out playable for a lot of people for a very long time now. Hunters is set during the time of The Mandalorian, and it includes a lot of characters that are actually inspired by iconic things within Star Wars. There are Stormtrooper characters, there are Jedi and Sith, and even a Wookiee character as well. The Jedi character is actually a droid Jedi. He is pretty much programmed to think that he's a Jedi. There are some really cool little twists with the different hunters that are available in the game. So this is a very, very exciting game. I know a lot of people aren't going to be showing all that much interest straight away because it is on mobile, but I've been playing the game, like I said, for over 18 months now, and it is a heap of fun. So I cannot wait for it to launch so that everyone can get their hands on it. Now, next on the list, we have the game that I'm pretty sure all of you would have seen at last month's Ubisoft Forward event, and that is Star Wars Outlaws. Now, this is a single-player open-world game that is being developed by Massive Entertainment and being published by Ubisoft. Massive Entertainment made the Division games. They also are currently making the Avatar Frontiers of Pandora game, which I believe is launching this year, and then next year they are meant to be launching Star Wars Outlaws. This game was actually announced back in January of 2020, which is a very long time ago at this point. It pretty much broke the news of EA's exclusivity deal ending, except all they really announced was that they were making a game. They didn't say anything about it until, like I said, last month at Ubisoft Forward, we pretty much learned everything there is to know about the game at that single event. Now, like I said, the game is releasing in 2024. It's kind of hard to say when that will be. I generally tend to guess that games are going to launch later in the year. Usually all the big AAA games release around September, October, November. So if I had to guess, it would probably be the end of 2024, but that is not always the case. If you look at Jedi Survivor, for example, that launched in April. It was actually meant to launch in March as well. So it could be early next year, which could mean the game is potentially, less than 9 months away or something like that, which is very, very exciting. It looks like a very similar game to almost like a crossover between Watch Dogs and Red Dead Redemption 2, even a bit of GTA in there as well. It's a game that is built on pretty much crime syndicates. The main character is Kay Vess, and the game is actually set during the original trilogy. It's set between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, except from what we can see, it's pretty much going to have nothing to do with the actual main story. The Empire will be involved, but this is not like a Jedi game or anything like that. It's pretty much all about crime syndicates. It looks very promising. The overall reaction to the game from the community seems really good, and I cannot wait to get my hands on it next year. Now, next up we have KOTOR Remastered, or Knights of the Old Republic, for those who aren't aware. This was the very next game to be announced after Star Wars Hunters in 2021. It was originally being developed by Aspyr Media, who have done a lot of PlayStation and Switch ports for Star Wars games. However, it actually wasn't meeting the standards, and is now actually being moved over to development by Saber Interactive. Now, because of that, a lot of people actually kind of thought this game was cancelled. There was a big rumor going around that it had been cancelled, and for probably a good 3 to 4 months there, a lot of people just assumed that, well, the game's cancelled, and it was almost like a certainty. But they have pretty much confirmed very recently the game is still going ahead. The game will be launching on the PS5 and the PC first as a timed exclusive, so you will not be able to get it on the Xbox Series S or X until probably 6 to 12 months later. They haven't actually said how long that will be yet, but generally timed exclusives are about 6 to 12 months. This one doesn't really have a release date yet, and because of the switch in development team, there is a good chance that the game has sort of internally been delayed, so it could still be 1 or 2 years away from actually launching. When they initially announced it, a lot of people thought it would be 2023, but I don't think that will be happening anytime soon. So my guess is probably the end of 2024, maybe 2025, depending on how big of a delay they needed to actually get the game back on track. But hopefully we do start to hear some info about this game very soon. I think this is going to be a fan favorite. KOTOR is obviously one of the all-time and most loved Star Wars games, so when they announced the remaster, a lot of people were very, very excited. Next up on the list, we have a very divisive one, and that is Star Wars Eclipse. Now, this had one of the coolest trailers that I think we've ever seen for a Star Wars game. It came out of absolutely nowhere. No one was expecting this. No one had really said any rumors about it or anything like that. And all of a sudden, we got this really long, really good-looking trailer for a game called Star Wars Eclipse. The game is said to be a multi-character action-adventure game that is set during the High Republic era of Star Wars. It is being developed by Quantic Dream, who are the developers behind Heavy Rain, Detroit Become Human, and more. And they are a pretty well-known development team for their very cinematic and very story-driven games. Now, since the initial reveal with that trailer, we pretty much haven't heard anything at all in terms of official stuff anyway. There was a lot of drama with the head of Quantic Dream, who has had some very, I guess, dramatic circumstances. I'm not going to go into that because it is a whole can of worms. A lot of people were saying that the game was pretty much going to be delayed or even cancelled. I honestly do think the game will potentially get cancelled. It's a game that until I'm actually playing it, I don't really believe it will actually launch, to be honest, simply because of all the drama that went on around it and the fact that apparently as soon as they announced it, there was just a lot of internal drama, and apparently the development team wasn't even big enough. They had to start hiring people for the game after they'd actually announced it. So there's already been a lot of stuff going on with this game. I do hope it launches because it looked absolutely sick in the trailer. I'm a big fan of the High Republic era. Originally, it was thought to be releasing in either 2027 or 2028 because it is very, very early in development. There have been more recent rumors that suggest 2026, but like I said, it could get pushed back even further, or to be honest, it could just completely get cancelled. So this is going to be a weird one to watch. I'm not too sure whether we will ever see this game in our own hands, but if it does launch and if it goes well, it could be an absolute all-time banger. Now, the next two games are actually being both made by Respawn, or at least one is in tandem with Respawn. There is the first-person shooter that is coming out from Respawn. We don't know anything about that game just yet. And then there is also a Respawn strategy game that is also being sort of co-directed or co-developed by BitReactor. Not long after the Eclipse reveal, EA actually announced there were 3 new games that were going to be developed by Respawn. One of them was obviously Survivor that we got earlier this year, but the other two were one, a single-player first-person shooter game that could potentially have multiplayer. We're not too sure yet. Initially, when they revealed it, I think we all kind of thought that was going to be a multiplayer game, but it does look like it is more pointing in the direction of a single-player, small campaign type of shooter, similar to like Republic Commandos, for example. The other one is a strategy game that is being co-developed, like I said, with BitReactor. They are a pretty much brand new studio, and a lot of the people who are working there are actually the people who made the XCOM games, a very well-known strategy game that is pretty much up there as one of the best strategy games ever. Now, we don't have many details on either of these games just yet. I dare say, though, now that with Survivor out of the way, Respawn's entire focus, at least in terms of the Star Wars team, will be working on these two games. There's been a lot of teasers and stuff on Twitter from BitReactor talking about their game, not so much talking about details, but just like updating their artwork and stuff. They're definitely gearing up towards something, and there have been advertisements for both of these games in terms of hiring new developers as well. So they're probably fairly early in development. There is a good chance with a game like the strategy game that is probably a little bit smaller. Those type of games are definitely a little bit easier to make than like a fully fledged open world game, for example, or a game like Jedi Survivor. So there is a chance that could potentially launch next year. We just don't know how far along that is in development. But my guess for probably both of those games would be 2025. We'll just have to wait and see. But like I said, right now, we don't really have too many details on either of these games. Now, last on the list, we have a game from Skydance New Media. Now, this is one that is very, very exciting because this is kind of like a resurrection of Project Ragtag that a lot of people would have heard about, which was the cancelled Star Wars game game. Now, when I say Resurrection, it's not necessarily the exact same game, but Amy Hennig, who pretty much helmed the game when it was being developed by Visceral before it got shut down anyway, she is back in charge. For those who don't know Amy Hennig, she pretty much created the Uncharted games, which are obviously a very loved franchise. So this one is definitely very exciting. This game is said to be a richly cinematic action adventure game, so again, very similar to Uncharted. We don't really know if this is genuinely a resurrection of Project Ragtag, so maybe they could actually pick up where they left off. It could be starting from scratch. We have absolutely no idea. People have speculated just because she is in charge and because of the sort of backlash they got for cancelling that game, that hey, maybe they are actually revamping and recreating that game from where they left off. But we don't really know just yet. Skydance New Media are actually also working on a Marvel game, and so obviously a game of that scale too. They're not going to rush both games out, especially not someone like Amy. She seems like she absolutely dominates every single time she goes to make a game. They are pretty much all bangers, and so I don't think she's going to rush out the Marvel game, and therefore she's probably not going to rush out the Star Wars game either. So this game is probably going to launch in 2025, 2026, if not even later than that. This one is probably not too close to launching, but either way, it is very, very exciting. This is one that a lot of people were very excited to hear about, because Project Ragtag, when they cancelled that, like I said, it got a lot of backlash there. EA got a lot of hate sent their way because that game looked very, very promising. So I hope this is like a resurrection of that game. Whether it is or not, I am definitely very excited nonetheless, and I cannot wait to hear more details. But that is pretty much it for all of the details that we know about every single Star Wars game that is currently in development. There are no doubt probably a lot more games that are actually in development that we just haven't heard about yet. The fact they've announced like 7 or 8 games now, if they've announced that many, then there's no reason there's probably not a lot more in the works as well. So we're gonna have to wait and see, but it is definitely a very exciting time for Star Wars gaming fans. I'm keen to hear which game you're most excited about and why you are the most excited about it, so be sure to leave a comment down below. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and may the Force be with you always.